What's up, y'all? Mike Atwater here, and we're here to talk about some chord building today. Intro to chord building made easy, okay? I got this little chart that I wrote out that I like to use when I teach students in person as well. I like to write this down. Think about this as the formula for chord building, okay? Little sections here really help you out when you want to learn how to create minor, major, diminished, augmented, sus2, sus4, 7th chords, 9th chords. We're going to focus on just minor, major, diminished, augmented, sus2, and sus4 today though, okay? But you can use this formula to form any chord that you want to, really. You know, if you use this formula and you've never played a chord before, that you can play chords you've never learned by just knowing the formula, which is pretty awesome, okay? We're going to work with a D chord today. To really understand the D chord, what the D chord consists of, we got a root 5, root 3. But let's break it down, okay? A D comes from a major scale, okay? It's a major chord. The theory of a D chord consists of a root, a 3, and a 5. Okay, what's a root, 3, and a 5? All right, well, let's talk about the major scale real quick. Got a D major scale here. Let's talk about it on one string because it's very important to know that on one string so you can really see the intervals, okay? So we'll start on the D string, okay? Okay, so that's it. We got open, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and back to the root, okay? It's a 7-note scale, all right? And the intervals here are listed here. We got a whole step to the second note, whole step to the third note, half step to the fourth, whole step to the fifth, whole step to the sixth, whole step to the seventh, and resolving back to the root, we have a half step, okay? So that's our major scale, our D major scale. And you can put it anywhere you want to for now. But it's important to know them intervals, exactly like we talked about. How far to get from a root to a 2, a whole step. How far to get from a 2 to a 3, a whole step, okay? And this is simply the numbers of the notes I played. We got a root, starting on the D string. We got a 2, we got a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, and then back to the root, okay? And I played a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. The reason we resolve to the root is because we like to work back from the root sometimes. When we're flattening the root, you know, we go this way, so it's nice to have a root there as well. It's nice to really know that, okay? So now that we've hopefully memorized the intervals, whole step, half step, and the scale itself, we can really start to understand the D major chord, okay? Which consists of a root, 5, and a root, and a 3. Meaning it consists of this note, and this note. A root, 3, and a 5. It's major, so it consists of root, 3, 5, which is D, F sharp, A, okay? So if I play that scale here, okay, I got a 1, which is a D, 2, 3, which is a F sharp, 5, which is A. So D, F sharp, and A, okay? D, E, F sharp, G, A, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I'm taking the D, which is the 1, the 3 of that, which is the F sharp, the 5, which is the A, okay? And we're gonna make a chord out of that, all right? The easiest way to configure that root 3, 5 into a D chord here is the basic open chord way, which is this way. All right, so this consists of a root, a 5, a root, and a 3. That's how they group this one up, okay? So just to test that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the first 2 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 6, 7, back to the 1, back to the root. All right, and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's where we get that 3. Again, we got root, 5, root, 3. Very important. Memorize the D, that the 4th through 1st string is root 5, root 3. So I'll say it. Root 5, root 3. And again, that comes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to the root. We're taking the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're taking root 3 and 5 and making it a chord, which is a major chord. All right? Now, memorize that. Root 5, root 3. Okay? How do we start changing that? How do we start chord building? How do we change that to a minor? Well, if you already know how to change that to a minor, fine, but do you understand it? Okay? So a major to a minor, if you look here, we got the flat sign. So what is that flat sign on? We got a flat sign on a 3 here. Okay? That means the 3rd is flattened when you change major to minor. Okay? So what you do is you identify your 3rd. Identify what changes between major and minor. Root 5, root 3. That would be the 2nd fret on the 1st string in a D chord. And flatten it. All right? So that means this note is going to go back to the 1st fret of the 1st string. Well, how does it do that? My 1st finger's in a way. Well, what I do is put my second finger where my 1st finger is, and then put my 1st finger back. So I got a D chord, and then I got a D minor. Right? And all we did was took that 3 back, and we flattened it. Okay? Now, you notice it doesn't turn into a 2 when you flatten it. Why? Because when you flatten something, it doesn't go back a whole step. It goes back a half step. When you flatten and sharpen, it goes in half-step intervals, okay? So from a 3 to a 2 is a whole step. A flattened 3rd is in between that 2 and 3. It's a half step, okay? Now notice if you sharpen your 3 to a 4 is a half step. So turning a sharp 3 is a 4, okay? Because there's nothing in between a 3 and a 4 except for a half step, okay? So remember, flats are a half step, sharps are a half step. Sharp is moving this way, up, flats are moving down this way. Okay, so now that we made this minor chord, let's try something else. Let's try a diminished chord. What happens to the root 3 and 5 on a diminished chord? What happens is you flatten the 3rd just like you do the minor, and you also flatten the 5th. Okay? So what you want to do is identify where the 3rd and 5th is. Again, on the D chord, we got root 3, root 5. Okay? 3 and 5 are on the 1st and 3rd string. On the E and G string. That means we're going to take these 2 notes back a half step. Okay? That's kind of a hard stretch. So what I'm going to do here is play a D chord with my pinky here and not my 3rd finger. My pinky on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. All right, so I got a root, I got a 5, and to diminish it, you have to flatten that 5. So I'm going to flatten it. I got a root here, and that stays. And then I got a 3 here. On a diminished, I flatten it. Okay, so that has to come back as well, that 3. So before I had a root 5, root 3, normal, root 5, root 3, and then I flattened the 5 and the 3, root flat 5, root 3. That turns it into a diminished chord. So that's how you play a D diminished. Triad. Pretty cool, right? D. D diminished. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Again, we got a D. To make a D minor, we just flatten that 3rd, meaning go back a half step. Where's the 3rd? Root 5, root 3, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. So the 3 is on the 1st string. We flatten that and go back a fret. Everything else stays the same. Make sure you double check, okay? Root 5, root, flat 3. All right? Now let's talk about augmented. What happens here? We got major, root 3, 5. All right. Augmented, you got root 3, sharp 5. So what changes? The 5 changes. It goes sharp. Okay, we look up here. You sharpen a 5, it doesn't turn into a 6 because we have a whole step. And when you sharpen something, it only goes up a half step. All right? So it's a sharp 5. Root 3, sharp 5. All right? So let's identify where our 5 is in a D chord. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st string. So that's the 3rd string. Root 5. So we're going to have to sharpen that note right there. Root 5, root 3. So the 3rd string, 2nd fret, moves up to the 3rd string, 3rd fret, and everything else stays the same. Okay? So how am I going to do that? I'm just going to put my 3rd finger up there and then put my pinky where my 3rd finger was. So now from the 4th to the 1st string fret-wise, I have open, 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. Okay? So now I got a D augmented chord. Pretty cool, right? D chord, D augmented. Got a cool vibe, right? You know, and in context, if you add something like a 6 after, it sounds pretty cool. All right, now again, our augmented. All right, so let's talk about, make sure we're doing this right. A D chord from the 1st to the 4th to the 1st string, fret-wise, would be open, 2, 3, 2. Open, 2nd, 3rd, and 2nd frets. The minor would be from the 4th to the 1st string, open, 2nd, 3rd, and 1st fret. Okay? And it's important to visualize it as well. So diminished would be open, 1st, 3rd, and 1st fret. Visualizing it. Open, 1st, 3rd, and 1st fret. Diminished. All right, we did augmented, so let's do that again. That's going to be open, 3rd, 3rd, and 2nd fret. Okay? Remember, on the augmented, you just sharpen the 5. All right, so now, something new that we see here. Everything consisted of a root 3, 5, somewhat. Flat 3, sharp 5, flat 5, root 3, 5. But now we're starting to see different numbers here. We got root 2, 5, which is a sus2, and root 4, 5. Well, what happens to the 3 from a root 3, 5 to a root 2, 5? The root 3, 5, the 3 turns into a 2, okay? So let's look over here at our major scale interval and find out what happens. How to get from a 3 to a 2? It's a whole step. So we're moving a whole step back. Instead of flattening it a half step, we're double flattening it. We're flattening it 2 half steps, which is a whole step, okay? So from a root 3, 5 to a root 2, 5, we're flattening the 3 a whole step, okay? Next step, identify the 3rd. We have to flatten that 3rd a whole step, okay? So that's the 1st string here, root 5, root 3. All right, so we got to take that back a whole step. So let's visualize this here. All right, minor would be back to the 1st fret, and that would be a half step, and a whole step would be taking this off, this 2nd finger, and playing your 1st string open. So that's a D sus2 chord, okay? Because your 2nd finger came off, and that note went back a whole step. All right, so from the 4th to the 1st string, fret-wise, we have open, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and open. That's a D sus2 chord. Pretty cool, right? D chord, D sus2 chord, right? So now we take that same thing and we try to make a sus4 chord here, okay? Root 4, 5. Let's see the difference between a major, root 3, 5, to a root 4, 5. Obviously, it's the 3, because the 3's not there anymore. All right, now we look here at the major scale intervals, figure out how to get from a 3 to a 4. Okay, from a 3 to a 4 is a half step. Okay, that's pretty simple. All right, now what do? We identify where our 3rd is. It's on the 1st string, again, like it's always been. All right, so we're taking that note and we're moving it up a half step to make it a 4. So our 3rd note in our major scale goes up to a G. All right, and how did I do that? I just put my pinky down on the first string 3rd fret because the first string 2nd fret is a D chord. To sharpen that 3, turns it into a 4, and then we got a root 4/5, a sus4 chord, okay? All right, so that's how you chord build. That's how you understand it. You got to follow along. So remember, memorize the voicing. Figure out what you want to change it to. A major to a sus2. All right, identify what changes. The 3 goes to a 2, right? Look at the major scale intervals. The 3 goes to a 2. How far? A whole step. A whole step means 2 frets. I don't know if I said that. If I didn't, a half step is 1 fret. A whole step is 2 frets. All right. Then you change that 1 note, take it back a whole step, and it turns into a 2. It's that simple. All right. So you want to memorize all of your voicings here. Okay. Depending on how you play a chord, the voicing's different. So really dive into major scale intervals, okay, and figuring out what your chord consists of. All right, if you memorize the major scale in most keys or all keys, it's really going to help you chord build. But even if you don't memorize the major scale in all keys, if you know the intervals of the major scale, that no matter what fret you're on, no matter what key you're in, no matter what root you start on, you'll know every note in it. So this is the most important thing, the major scale intervals, okay? So hopefully you only knew a D and a D minor, maybe, and you learned how to form a major, diminished, augmented, sus2, and sus4, okay? There's many other chords, but that's just a basic way of how to chord build. And it's a little complicated. If you have any questions, you can comment, you can call me up, you can call Freeway, ask for Mike, ask for Don, ask for Niles, any of these geniuses here, awesome people, love working here. Like and subscribe this video if you enjoyed it, and feel free again to comment and I'll hit you up, and let's have a good time. Let's play guitar. All right, y'all. Mike Atwater out. Have a good one.